So, what is radical honesty? Radical honesty is a commitment and a dedication to wanting to know the truth of who you are, of what is guiding your actions, your thoughts, your perceptions, your behavior, your experience of life. Because before we start this kind of work where we are introspecting, where we are doing our shadow work, we are merely a product of our environment, of our social and cultural conditioning, of the parenting that we experienced, of the school that we went to, the people that we grew up with. We are merely a product of all of those experiences. And so when you come to doing your shadow work, you get a chance to look at things more objectively. One of the ways I remember in my own shadow work process in 2015 was really the start of me really getting to the point of radical honesty. Was I wanted to start looking at my past relationships with intimate partners and also with friends and with family, not in terms of wanting to be right, but in terms of wanting to know the truth of where I may have been wrong. And so by doing this, I was really opening myself up. I was kind of putting the ego to one side and the persona that the ego is so attached to, the mask that I wear in public, which is made up of all the best parts of me and some made up from other things that I wanted to identify with also. It's about putting all of that to one side and allowing for the possibility that I could have been wrong about some things. And through that process, for many, many weeks, doing lots of drawing, lots of working with my dreams, using the symbols from my dreams to draw them, to meditate with them, to dream the dream on with those, I was able to see, and by journaling as well, I was able to see where I had been wrong. And it wasn't just like, okay, now I see. There were layers of lies, and it was like, okay, so I came to one truth, and then the week after, I would learn something more, and so it kind of left the other truth that I thought was truth last week. It became null and void, and so in this way, it's like you're kind of peeling back the layers of lies that I told myself about myself, lies that I believed that other people thought about me, lies that I had told myself about the people around me, or stories that I had told myself to make myself right in different situations. And so in that way we can see where the ego kind of wants to kind of keep us kind of elevated, and it wants to kind of find any excuse to make us right in situations, especially in conflict. And so by really understanding those things about myself, I started to notice what my true motivations were, and they're all linked to unconscious shadow material about myself, all ultimately linked, when looking for the roots of those, all ultimately linked to traumatic experiences, loss, things that I found difficult in my life, complexes, feeling toned ideas that had started at whatever age, and continued on. And so in this way, I was really learning so much. And there was definitely a process of me feeling sort of fragmented. I felt very fragmented, and that was the title for some of my artwork at that time, was because I felt that, when you peel back so much of the layers of social and cultural conditioning, the conditioning from your parents, the conditioning from your school, your environment, your social, the society that you live in, when you kind of deconstruct all of that and you're left as almost like a child again, almost all those things kind of go away, and it's like, well, who am I? If I don't identify with all those things, then who am I? And this is a really good time to start thinking also about your morality, your integrity, where you learn those things from. One thing that I talk about when I talk about radical honesty, because I think it might help some of you to kind of get to this point again, because it's something that obviously I'm not very sort of proud of, but one thing I noticed about myself in past relationships in my late teens, in my 20s, it was that there was definitely a feeling of or a perception that I was completely unconscious of, which was about entitlement in relationships. There was this this idea or this expectation that somehow I was like the princess and I should be looked after and paid for and all these things. Not as excessively as some people, I know, but I can still see, in that self-reflection, it was very useful because I could see then, what what my perception was. And so when you get this kind of realization about yourself, you're in a better place because you can change it then. Before doing any kind of work like this, with self-reflection, with shadow work, you're not in a position to really know these things about yourself. You are completely just a product of your environment. You're reacting to the external, and you don't know where your reactions come from because you haven't looked at them. But in this way, I was able to look at it and say, okay, well then, how do I really feel about men? Where has that expectation come from? And so by also looking into these things as well, by journaling, by writing them down, by understanding, knowing them, turning them around, I was able to see where they came from. They were learned experiences. These were taught to me in my home. They were taught to me, in very sort of gentle ways, in unconscious ways by the people that cared for me. In magazines when I was a kid, because we didn't have social media back then, but it was in the magazines, it was in the love stories that you see on TV. It was all of these kind of influences. It was in my society, my school, my group, and so in my environment it was there. And so in this way, when we start to kind of use radical honesty, we get to the next stage, which is about building your own moral compass and really creating yourself, because until then you're just a product of your environment and your experiences. And so now you're in a better position then, because now you can see what has guided you, you can see where the roots were, and now you can redesign and say, okay, so how am I going to now behave in certain situations? How am I going to change my behavior? I'm going to change my perceptions. And in this way you are creating who you are, and you become more of the kind of the true nature of the person, instead of just just a sponge that soaks up everything and then fucking splurts out all the rubbish that we've learned. We learn what our true motivations are. And so this is a very, very difficult process. The process of being very honest with yourself about yourself and your situation and the way that you behaved. You can find out things about yourself that you didn't know. You can say, okay, well, I wasn't right about that. I can see where I provoked some negative situations in my past. But as I said before, it puts you in a position where you really know yourself, and you have an opportunity then to make a change, to make a difference to yourself, and to create the best version of you. So I hope that's been helpful.